Hi, folks. To judge by what politicians and what the media and the social media say day in and day out, the US is in the grips of a colossal border crisis. You would think a Martian invasion of the US is taking place, a sort of modern day enactment of the War of the Worlds, the famous 1930s novel by British novelist H.G. Wells. Actually, there is no border crisis. What there is a mess created entirely by politicians who understand nothing about how immigration works, or to put it another way, about how human nature and the law of supply and demand work. Under the Biden administration, more than 6 million people have been arrested for crossing illegally into the US. About 1.5 million have been told to leave, but are still in the country, and the asylum system has a backlog of about 2 million people. Of course, many of those released and waiting to appear in court are sent to so-called sanctuary cities, while others are vegetating in border towns, where natives are alarmed at the prospect of being overwhelmed with brown-skinned newcomers. The root of the problem is that the legal path has become almost non-existent. So people cross over illegally, become apprehended, and then hope to get asylum, hence the so-called crisis. If the US allowed Americans willing to, actually desperate to hire them, and allowed people willing to work to come in, the problem would go away, as it did when the country had more intelligent and realistic immigration policies, including market-based quotas and, yes, guest worker programs. There are currently 9 million job openings in the country, well, 8,800,000 to be precise, and employers are miserable and frustrated because they don't find people to take those jobs. The folly of politicians and political decision makers and shapers of public opinion is standing in the way. The US economy needs them, as the conservatives and the classical liberals of yesteryear once understood. Remember Reagan? As we all know, participation in the labor force has fallen and is going to continue to fall dramatically, both because of people reaching retirement age and due to the fact that the population has stopped growing. People are not having babies anymore. This bodes ill for economic growth. Half of the growth experienced in recent decades came from adding more workers and more work hours to the economy, and only half came from gains in productivity, the ability to produce more with less. With fewer workers and the fact that productivity growth has slowed tremendously in the last 10 years, where the hell is economic growth going to come from? The idea that immigrants are taking jobs away from natives is stupid beyond comprehension, since again there are millions of jobs available. Even more empty-headed is the idea that immigrants are depressing the salary of low-skilled workers. Actually, in the leisure and hospitality industries, for instance, i.e. bars, hotels, restaurants, you name it, wages have risen 60% in the last decade, while those of workers in the private economy at large have risen 40%, much less. That's what you get when you have too many jobs chasing too few workers. And obviously, this makes it much more costly for employers to invest and produce. With an influx of legal immigrants who took the low-skilled jobs available, things would work very differently. Not to speak of the advantages, the great advantages, of bringing in skilled and educated job seekers from overseas. So the unfair competition argument used to justify the current immigration policies is simply ludicrous. And so is the argument that immigrants are mostly seeking welfare payments. Actually, they are ineligible for 31 types of welfare payments, as are the 2 million visitors with visas, and even green card holders who've been residing in the US for less than 5 years. And what about the charge that these immigrants are rapists and murderers? Actually, the statistics tell the opposite story. Natives are twice as likely to get arrested for violent crimes and 4 times more likely to get arrested for property crimes. In Texas, one of the major border states, the conviction rate of illegal immigrants has been half that of the native population in recent years. And by the way, that of legal immigrants has been significantly lower than both. For God's sake, bring back some sanity into immigration policy in the US and the crisis will magically go away to the benefit of everyone.